she was meant for another man, the cowboy married her after she escaped through the Clara, had never imagined that her life would feel like a cage. She lived in a small town where the sun baked the red dirt streets and the wind carried the scent of hay and horses. Everything about the town was quiet and simple, yet for her it felt stifling. From the moment she woke up, she was told what to do, where to go, and even how to think. Her days were full of chores, polite greetings, and careful smiles that hid her growing fear. She had dreams just like any young woman, dreams of walking freely in a garden full of flowers, or reading books without someone watching her. But her reality was different. Her family had promised her to a man named Edwin when she was barely 19. Edwin was wealthy and well-respected in the town. People admired his sharp suits and the way he spoke with confidence at gatherings. But behind the polished exterior, Edwin was controlling. He expected Clara to be obedient, quiet, and without complaint. He didn't see her as a person with hopes or feelings. To him, she was a possession, something to be displayed when convenient and controlled at all other times. Clara had learned early on that resistance could only bring anger or worse. She remembered the time she had spoken up about wanting to attend a fair in the neighboring town. Edwin's face had turned dark, and his words had cut through her spirit like a cold wind. "A woman's place is at home. You will go where I say." From that moment, Clara knew she could not trust her own voice. But inside her, a fire was growing. It was a quiet, steady flame at first, hidden behind her gentle expressions and polite nods. She refused to let Edwin's threats take away her dreams entirely. She would steal moments alone, walking along the fences, feeling the sun on her face and imagining life beyond the town. Sometimes she would watch travelers passing through, the horses kicking up dust behind them. She would wonder where they were going, what freedom felt like, and whether she would ever taste it herself. Clara's grandmother had once told her stories of courage. She had been a woman who refused to accept life's limitations, who had found ways to escape hardship in a time when women had even fewer choices. These stories became Clara's secret guide. One story, in particular, stayed with her, a tale of a hidden trail leading out of the town, used by those who wanted to be free. It was a path through the woods, long forgotten by most. But if one knew where to go, it could lead to a new beginning. Clara clung to this story, memorizing the directions, imagining the sound of the forest at night, and dreaming of the moment she would finally step beyond the walls that had held her life captive. Every day was a test of patience. Edwin kept a close eye on her. He would ask where she had been, who she had spoken to, and what she had thought. Even casual questions felt like traps. Clara learned to give small, polite answers, always careful not to reveal too much. She had to hide the growing desire for freedom, the plans she sketched secretly in her mind. Her room became her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe and let her imagination run wild. She would sit by the window at night, listening to the wind rustle the trees, picturing herself walking into the unknown, far from the dusty streets and Edwin's oppressive rules. Yet fear was never far. Clara knew that one wrong step could ruin everything. The thought of being caught, dragged back, and punished was always in her mind. Her heart would race at the sound of footsteps outside her door. Every knock, every voice, made her wonder if her secret had been discovered. But the desire for freedom grew stronger than the fear. She practiced moving silently, memorizing the routes she would take, and imagining conversations she might need to have along the way. She prepared herself mentally for a journey that could change her life forever. In the daytime, she had to appear calm and composed. She helped with household chores, greeted visitors with polite smiles, and performed her daily duties without complaint. To outsiders, Clara seemed like any other young woman in the town, soft-spoken, obedient, and content. No one suspected the determination burning inside her. It was a careful balance she had to maintain. Any hint of rebellion could bring disaster, but hiding her spirit also made the eventual escape all the sweeter. Clara's mind often wandered to what life might be like beyond the town. She imagined wide fields, rivers flowing freely, and the laughter of people who could live without fear. She pictured herself learning new skills, meeting people who treated her as a person, not property. Most of all, she imagined a life where she could choose her own path, where decisions were hers alone. These thoughts kept her alive in a life that often felt like a slow suffocation. Despite the constant tension, Clara found small moments of joy. She would watch birds in the morning, their songs light and free, a stark contrast to her silent, measured days. She noticed the way sunlight would filter through the trees, the smell of fresh bread from a bakery, and the gentle kindness of strangers who had no idea of her struggles. These tiny beauties reminded her that the world was bigger than her cage and that freedom was possible, even if it seemed far away. Her plan to escape was dangerous but precise. She would wait for the right night, one with enough cover and the least risk of being seen. She had studied the old trail over and over, memorizing the twists, turns, and landmarks. Each step had to be calculated. She packed only the essentials: food, water, a blanket, and a small journal she intended to keep during her journey. She knew the escape would not just be a physical act, but also an emotional trial. The unknown scared her, but the thought of living under Edwin's control forever was even worse. Even as she prepared, Clara worried about the consequences. Her family had accepted the arrangement with Edwin, believing it was the best for her. She understood their perspective, but she also knew that her life was not theirs to dictate. She had to make the choice for herself. The moral weight of leaving her family behind pressed on her heart, yet she also realized that staying would mean losing herself completely. Each night she prayed silently for courage and wisdom, hoping that when the moment came, she would have the strength to act. Days turned into weeks as she waited for the perfect moment. She watched the rhythm of the town, noting when the streets were empty and when guards or neighbors were distracted. She observed Edwin's habits, his nightly routines, and his trusted friends who might notice her absence. Every detail mattered. She practiced walking quietly across her room, moving with the kind of stealth she had only read about in stories. Her anticipation was a mixture of fear and excitement, and each day she felt her heart grow bolder. Clara's inner strength surprised even herself. She discovered that she could endure more than she thought, and that her mind was sharper than anyone gave her credit for. The challenges she faced daily had honed her instincts. She could sense danger in the smallest movements, read emotions in people's eyes, and plan several steps ahead. The woman who once felt powerless was becoming someone who could control her destiny. And then, one evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills and the sky turned a deep orange, Clara realized that the time had come. The town seemed quieter than usual. The wind carried a soft promise of change. She packed her small bag carefully, checking every item twice. Her heart pounded, but not with fear alone. There was excitement, too. Tonight, she would step into the unknown. Tonight, she would take the first real step toward freedom. As she opened the door to leave, Clara paused for a moment. She looked back at the house, at the rooms that had once held her entire life. There was sadness in leaving, but also a thrill she had never known. With a deep breath, she stepped onto the path her grandmother had told her about, the trail that would lead her away from the life she had been trapped in. Every sound, Every rustle of the leaves felt amplified. Her footsteps were careful, deliberate. She moved like a shadow, hoping the night would hide her from prying eyes. The first few steps were the hardest. Clara's mind raced with memories of her life so far, both the painful and the precious. She remembered her mother's gentle voice, her grandmother's stories, and the rare moments of laughter she had shared with friends. But she also remembered the fear, the control, and the nights filled with worry and sadness. With each step, she felt the weight of the past lifting slightly, replaced by hope for what was to come. By the time she reached the edge of the woods, the town was barely visible behind her. The path ahead was dark and unknown, but it was hers to walk. Clara's heart swelled with a mixture of fear and joy. She had waited so long for this moment, and now it was finally here. The trail stretched before her, winding through trees and underbrush, promising both danger and freedom. She knew the journey would not be easy, but for the first time in her life, Clara felt that she had a choice. She was taking control, and nothing would stop her now. Clara ran through the narrow trail, her heart pounding in her chest. Every step she took crushed leaves and twigs beneath her feet, but she could not stop to worry. The wind whipped her hair across her face, and raindrops stung her skin as the storm began to fall. She had waited for this night for months, memorizing every twist and turn of the hidden path her grandmother had described. Now it was time to put all that knowledge to the test. The night was dark, the forest thick, and the sounds of the town faded quickly behind her. Every snap of a branch or rustle of leaves made her flinch, but she kept moving, telling herself that each step brought her closer to freedom. Her bag, though small, weighed heavily on her shoulder. Inside were only the essentials: a few pieces of bread, a small bottle of water, a blanket, and the little journal she treasured. She had packed it quickly, trying not to make noise, and had prayed it would be enough. Her fingers clenched the straps of the bag as she ran, thinking about the life she was leaving behind. Fear mingled with excitement, and she felt alive in a way she never had before. She was no longer just Clara, the obedient girl from town. She was Clara, the woman taking control of her own destiny. The trail twisted and turned through dense woods. Rain soaked her clothes, making them cling to her, and the mud made every step heavier. Her boots slipped more than once, but she caught herself just in time. The forest seemed endless, and the storm made it harder to see. Clara kept her eyes on the faint glimmer of moonlight through the trees, following the landmark she had memorized: a crooked tree, a large rock shaped like a saddle, and a fallen log that marked the halfway point of the hidden trail. Every detail mattered, and she repeated them in her mind to stay focused. After what felt like hours, Clara reached a small clearing. The storm had lessened slightly, though the clouds still poured rain over the landscape. She stopped for a moment, gasping for air, and looked around. The trees were tall and close together, their branches forming a roof above her that shielded her from most of the rain. She hugged herself for warmth, shivering not only from the cold but from exhaustion and adrenaline. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it would feel like to be truly free. She pictured a place where she could choose her own path, where no one could tell her what to do, and where fear no longer followed her like a shadow. But the moment was short-lived. She knew she could not rest for long. Edwin's men could be anywhere searching for her. She remembered the last time she had seen Edwin's face, the anger and disbelief in his eyes when he realized she was gone. The memory made her quicken her pace. The thought of being caught again filled her with dread. Clara whispered a small prayer to herself, asking for guidance and protection. She reminded herself that she had come too far to turn back now. Every step forward was a victory, no matter how small. As she moved through the woods, she noticed the forest was not empty. Tiny creatures scurried through the underbrush, and the rain created small streams that cut across her path. She carefully stepped over them, mindful of making too much noise. At one point she froze when she heard the distant howl of a wolf. Her heart leaped into her throat, but she reminded herself that she was not alone in the world. She had survived this far, and she could survive what was ahead. Each sound, each rustle was a test of her courage, and with every test, she proved to herself that she was stronger than she had ever imagined. Suddenly, Clara stumbled over something in the mud and fell forward, her hands and knees scraping against the wet ground. She cursed softly under her breath, rubbing her palms where the bark had cut them. Her bag slipped slightly, and she adjusted it quickly. She realized how much danger there was in every small misstep. One wrong move, one loud noise, could give away her location. But even in that moment of fear, she refused to give in. She pushed herself up, breathing hard, and continued. Her determination was stronger than the storm or the mud. She had a goal, and she would not stop until she reached it. Hours seemed to pass as she navigated the winding trail. Clara's muscles ached, her clothes were soaked through, and her lips were chapped from the cold wind. She had been moving non-stop, driven by the knowledge that freedom was within reach but not yet secured. As dawn began to break, the forest slowly opened into a wide meadow. Clara stopped at the edge of the trees, taking in the sight before her. The first light of morning reflected off the wet grass, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to breathe. She was still far from safe, but the town was behind her, and the journey toward a new life had begun. It was there, in the meadow, that she saw him, a tall figure on horseback, moving slowly across the grass. His hat shaded his face, and his eyes scanned the horizon with a quiet intensity. Clara froze. She had not expected to see anyone, especially not now. Her instincts screamed at her to hide, but the open meadow left few places to duck. The man seemed calm, unhurried, and there was something in the way he moved that suggested he was more than just an ordinary traveler. He noticed her immediately. The horse slowed as the rider approached, stopping a short distance away. Clara held her breath, unsure whether to speak or run. The man tipped his hat slightly, a gesture that somehow made her feel less threatened. His voice, when he spoke, was calm and steady. "Are you all right, miss?" he asked. There was no judgment in his tone, only concern. Clara's mind raced. Should she tell him who she was? Could she trust him? She shook her head slightly, hiding her fear and exhaustion behind a small nod. The man dismounted slowly, keeping his hands visible. He introduced himself as Luke, a local cowboy who had been traveling through the area. He asked few questions at first, sensing her hesitation. Instead, he offered her a blanket and some water from his saddlebag. Clara hesitated, but then accepted. She wrapped the blanket around herself, grateful for the warmth, and sipped the water carefully. Luke did not press her for details, though she could tell he wanted to help. There was something genuine in his manner, a kind of honesty that made Clara feel safe, even in her vulnerable state. They stayed in the meadow for a while, just watching the sky lighten with the morning sun. Clara felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time in her life, someone had seen her without judgment, without trying to control her. Luke seemed to understand, even if he did not know the full story. After a while, he offered her a ride on his horse, insisting it would be safer than walking any further alone. Clara hesitated, but the kindness in his eyes gave her courage. She climbed onto the horse behind him, holding tightly as they moved slowly through the morning mist. As they traveled, Luke shared stories about the nearby towns, the landscape, and the life of a cowboy. His voice was steady and reassuring, a stark contrast to the fear and tension that had filled Clara's life for so long. She listened quietly, absorbing every detail, and gradually the fear began to fade. She realized that life could be gentle and safe, at least for now. For the first time, she felt the possibility of happiness. Clara's mind wandered to her past, to the life she had left behind. She thought of Edwin, of the house, and the strict rules she had lived under. For a moment, a shadow of fear returned, reminding her that her journey was far from over. But she also remembered the thrill of taking control, the courage she had shown in escaping. She understood that the future was not yet secure, but she was ready to face it. Luke seemed to sense her thoughts, giving a reassuring squeeze of her shoulder. No words were needed. His presence alone was enough to make her feel stronger. They stopped near a small river where Luke suggested they rest and eat a bit of breakfast. He unpacked some dried meat and bread, sharing it with her. Clara felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had been hungry not just for food, but for kindness, for someone to treat her as a person, not a possession. They spoke little at first, but as the morning passed, a quiet companionship began to form. Clara realized that, in Luke, she had found a guide, a protector, and perhaps even a friend. After breakfast, they continued their journey, moving through forests, fields, and gentle hills. Clara began to relax more with each passing hour. She felt her body regain some strength, and her mind cleared of the fear that had dominated her for so long. She listened to the sounds of nature, the wind through the trees, the calls of birds, and even the soft clip-clop of Luke's horse. Each sound reminded her that life was bigger than fear, bigger than control, and full of possibilities. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Clara looked at Luke again. She realized she trusted him, perhaps more than anyone she had ever met. His calm, honest manner and quiet strength made her feel safe in a world that had often been cruel. She began to hope that the journey ahead could lead to a life she had never dared to imagine, one full of freedom, choice, and even happiness. Clara woke to the soft light of morning filtering through the small cabin Luke had prepared for her. The wooden walls smelled faintly of smoke and pine, and the warmth of the fire still lingered in the hearth. For the first time in months, she felt safe. She stretched her arms and let out a quiet sigh, the kind of sigh that carries relief after a long struggle. Outside, she could hear the gentle sounds of horses moving in the barn and the wind brushing against the trees. It was a simple life, but it felt like freedom to her. Luke had already gone out to the fields, as he always did in the early hours. He believed in starting work before the sun was fully up, a habit born of years spent on the ranch. Clara dressed quickly in the clothes she had brought, patched and worn from the escape, but now clean and dry thanks to Luke's careful attention. She went outside to the barn, where he was feeding the horses, his movements confident and steady. He looked up when he saw her, and a small smile appeared on his face. "Morning," he said, his voice calm and welcoming. "Sleep well?" Clara nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest at his kindness. "Yes, thank you," she replied softly. I've never really had a place like this before." Luke chuckled lightly. "You're welcome here. This place is simple, but it's honest. Nothing will force you to stay against your will." That sentence struck Clara deeply. The idea that she could be somewhere without fear, without control, was almost foreign to her. She had lived all her life under someone else's rules, and now she was being told she was free to choose. It was a strange, wonderful feeling. The days that followed settled into a rhythm that was both hard and comforting. Clara helped Luke with chores around the ranch. She learned to feed the animals, gather firewood, and even ride a horse more confidently than she ever thought possible. At first her hands were clumsy, her muscles sore, and her confidence low, but Luke was patient, never rushing her and always offering encouragement. "You're doing fine," he would say, his voice steady. "Take your time. You'll learn." Clara felt a growing sense of accomplishment. Every chore she completed, every skill she learned, reminded her that she was capable of more than she had been allowed to believe. The ranch became her sanctuary, a place where effort and honesty mattered more than status or wealth. And every evening, after the work was done, she would sit by the fire with Luke, sharing small stories, learning about his life and letting herself laugh for the first time in months. Even with this growing sense of security, Clara's past was never far away. She could not forget Edwin, the man she had escaped from, or the fear that he might track her down. Some nights, she would wake in the dark, her heart racing, imagining his shadow looming over the cabin. The thought made her shiver, and she would quickly remind herself that she had taken steps to protect herself. Luke's presence offered comfort, but she knew she could not rely entirely on someone else. She needed to be alert, careful, and ready for anything. One afternoon, while Clara was checking the fences near the pasture, she noticed a rider in the distance, moving cautiously through the trees. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be Edwin? She ducked behind a tree, watching carefully. The rider moved slowly, scanning the area, but there was no sign of hostility. As he came closer, she recognized the man. It was not Edwin. It was a traveler, carrying a bundle of supplies, probably unaware of the nearby ranch. Clara exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and a reminder that danger could appear at any moment. She realized that living freely required constant vigilance and that freedom was never absolute. But she also felt proud of herself for staying calm, for observing before acting. Each day, she grew stronger, not just physically, but emotionally. She learned to balance caution with trust, fear with hope. Luke noticed her unease when she returned to the cabin. "Something wrong?" he asked. Clara shook her head, forcing a small smile. "No, just remembering to stay careful." He nodded, understanding. "Good. That's wise. But don't let fear control you."
"You've earned a right to live your life." Those words became a quiet mantra for Clara.
She realized that the fear she had carried for so long could not be allowed to dominate her days. She practiced small acts of bravery, like riding farther than she had before, venturing into the woods to gather firewood alone, or speaking openly about her thoughts with Luke. Each small act built her confidence, showing her that freedom was not just a dream, it could be a lived reality. Their companionship grew naturally, without pressure or expectation. Luke respected her boundaries, never forcing conversation or action. Clara, in turn, found herself opening up, sharing memories of her childhood, her grandmother's stories, and even her fears. Their conversations were gentle, sometimes filled with laughter, sometimes quiet, reflecting the peaceful life they were building together. But the shadow of Edwin lingered. Clara never knew if or when he might appear, and the uncertainty was a constant undercurrent. She found herself practicing strategies for escape and defense, just in case. She learned to recognize when a stranger might be dangerous, how to hide quickly, and how to remain calm under pressure. These lessons were sobering but necessary. Freedom required not only courage, but also preparation. One day, while Clara and Luke were working in the fields, they noticed smoke rising from the direction of the town. Clara's heart sank. Could Edwin have discovered her location? She felt the familiar grip of fear in her chest. Luke immediately moved to her side, his expression serious but calm. "Stay here," he said quietly. "I'll check it out." Clara hesitated, She wanted to run, to hide, but she also wanted to face the situation with strength. Luke returned after a short while, smiling reassuringly. "False alarm," he said. "A barn caught fire near the edge of town. Nothing to worry about here." Clara exhaled, feeling tension leave her body. Even small events like this reminded her that the world could be unpredictable, but with careful attention and courage, she could navigate it. As the weeks passed, Clara and Luke's routine strengthened their bond. They worked together, shared meals, and spent evenings by the fire talking about the future. Luke never pushed for more than she was ready to give, and Clara never felt pressured to change who she was. Their relationship grew naturally, built on trust, respect, and quiet companionship. Clara began to see the possibility of happiness, not just safety, but a genuine life filled with choice, laughter, and connection. Despite the peaceful days, Clara remained aware that danger could return. She kept watch over the ranch, noted the approach of strangers, and practiced skills that would help her escape if needed. She did not live in constant fear, but she respected the lessons of her past. Freedom, she realized, was not just about escaping. It was about staying aware, prepared, and strong. Luke noticed her vigilance and offered gentle advice. "It's good to be careful," he said one evening, "but don't forget to enjoy life. You've come so far."
"You deserve to feel peace."
Clara smiled, feeling the truth in his words.
She realized that while danger might exist, she had the power to choose how to live. She could balance caution with joy, vigilance with laughter, and with Luke's support, she was learning to do just that. Over time, Clara became more confident in herself and in the life she was building. She learned to ride her horse confidently across the fields, tend to the animals, and manage chores independently. She explored the woods around the ranch, discovering small streams, hidden meadows, and quiet spots perfect for reflection. Each discovery reminded her that the world was full of beauty, waiting to be explored, and that she was capable of embracing it fully. Luke and Clara's companionship deepened, though they never rushed. They respected each other's pace, allowing trust and affection to grow naturally. They shared quiet moments, sitting by the river, tending the garden, watching sunsets, moments that Clara had never imagined possible in her former life. Each day she felt more like herself, free to make decisions, to dream, and to simply exist without fear. Yet, Clara never allowed herself to forget the lessons of her past. She continued to practice self-reliance, to think ahead, and to respect the dangers of the world. Her freedom was precious, and she understood that maintaining it required effort, courage, and awareness. She balanced hope and vigilance, joy and caution, and in doing so, she found a new strength within herself. The quiet life on the ranch allowed Clara to heal, both physically and emotionally. She learned that freedom was not just escaping from someone else, it was learning to live fully, to trust wisely, and to embrace each day with courage. She began to understand that happiness was possible when she took responsibility for her own life and choices. And while the shadow of Edwin still lingered in her thoughts, it no longer dominated her. She had faced fear, taken action, and found allies she could trust. She was no longer the girl trapped by circumstance. She was a woman who had learned to navigate the world with wisdom, courage, and heart. Clara woke to the gentle sound of birds singing outside the cabin window. Sunlight streamed in, painting the wooden walls with a warm, golden glow. The world outside seemed peaceful, almost untouched by the struggles she had faced. She stretched her arms and took a deep breath, feeling the clean, fresh air fill her lungs. For the first time in a long time, she felt a deep, steady sense of calm. She had survived the fear, escaped the life she had been forced into, and built a new one with her own hands. Luke had already gone to tend the animals. Clara dressed quickly in comfortable clothes she had sewn herself, moving quietly around the cabin so as not to disturb the quiet morning. She stepped outside and saw Luke working with the horses, guiding them calmly through the morning routine. His movements were steady and practiced, a reflection of years spent on the ranch. Clara smiled quietly to herself. She had grown to admire his strength, his patience, and the way he treated the world with care and respect. She approached him, carrying a small basket of food they had prepared for breakfast. Luke looked up, his face lighting up with a warm smile when he saw her.
"Morning," he said softly. "Sleep well?" "Yes," Clara replied, feeling a contentment she had never known in her previous life.
I did. The air.
It feels different here. Safe. Luke nodded. It should, and it always will be, as long as we keep working together. Their days had fallen into a comfortable rhythm over the months. Clara had learned almost everything she needed to know about the ranch: feeding the animals, tending the crops, riding horses, and maintaining the fences. She had become strong, capable, and confident. Each task reminded her that she could take care of herself, that she was no longer someone to be controlled or commanded. Despite the tranquility, Clara never forgot her past. Edwin had disappeared from her life, at least for now, but the memory of fear lingered. It reminded her why freedom was so precious and why vigilance was necessary. She had learned to recognize danger early, to be cautious when strangers approached, and to trust her instincts. These lessons, though difficult, had shaped her into a woman who could face the world without trembling. One morning, as Clara and Luke worked side by side in the field, they noticed a stranger approaching the ranch from the road. Clara tensed, her heart beating faster. Her first thought was Edwin. Could he have finally found her? She glanced at Luke, whose expression was calm but alert. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. "I'll see who it is." Clara nodded, feeling the familiar mix of fear and determination. Luke stepped forward to meet the stranger, who turned out to be a traveling merchant carrying supplies. The man greeted Luke politely, unaware of the tension he had caused. Clara exhaled slowly, her muscles relaxing. Even small moments like this reminded her that the world could be unpredictable, but she had learned to navigate it. She no longer reacted with blind fear. She acted with awareness and control. As the days passed, Clara's confidence continued to grow. She explored the land around the ranch, discovering hidden streams, quiet meadows, and places where the wildflowers grew in abundance. Each discovery brought a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. She began keeping a journal again, writing not just of her fears and memories, but of the new life she was building. Her words were filled with hope, gratitude, and the excitement of possibilities. Luke noticed the change in her. "You're different now," he said one evening as they sat by the fire. "Stronger, more sure of yourself." Clara smiled softly, feeling a deep sense of pride. "I've had to be," she replied.
I couldn't let fear control me forever.
"I had to find my own strength." Their companionship had grown into something deeper over the months. Not in a rush, not in words of forced affection, but in quiet gestures, shared work, and mutual respect. Clara found herself drawn to Luke's honesty, his patience, and his ability to treat her as an equal. She realized that trust was the foundation of any relationship, and that true love grew naturally from shared experiences and mutual understanding. One afternoon, while Clara was gathering firewood near the edge of the forest, she heard a faint sound in the distance, a familiar voice calling her name. Her heart skipped a beat. She froze, listening carefully. The voice grew louder. It was Edwin. Her mind raced, panic rising. How had he found her? She had taken every precaution, hidden every trace. But now, here he was, calling her from the edge of the forest. Clara ran back toward the cabin, her heart pounding, knowing she had little time to act. Luke met her halfway, his expression fierce and protective.
He's here,
She said breathlessly. Luke nodded, already thinking ahead. Stay close to me, he instructed. We'll handle this. As Edwin approached, it became clear that he had underestimated Clara. She did not panic, did not plead. She stood beside Luke, confident and resolute. Edwin's anger and surprise were evident when he realized she had grown strong, independent, and supported. Clara spoke calmly, her voice steady. I am not yours to control. I am free, and I will not return to a life I do not choose. Edwin's face darkened, but he had no power here. The community around the ranch, Luke's presence, and Clara's own courage left him with no room to act. He turned and left, defeated, and Clara felt a surge of relief mixed with triumph. She had faced the shadow of her past and emerged stronger. After that day, life on the ranch continued, but the events had changed Clara. She realized that freedom was not simply about escaping. It was about standing firm, claiming her space in the world, and refusing to be silenced. She no longer feared shadows or unknown voices. She had proven to herself that she was capable of facing challenges and protecting the life she had built. Luke and Clara began to plan their future together, not out of necessity, not out of pressure, but out of choice. They decided to marry, not because society demanded it, but because they genuinely wanted to spend their lives together. The decision felt natural, a culmination of trust, respect, and shared experiences. Clara looked forward to the wedding not as a societal obligation, but as a celebration of freedom, love, and partnership. The wedding was simple, held on the ranch with only close friends and neighbors. Clara wore a dress she had sewn herself, and Luke stood proudly beside her, his eyes filled with warmth and admiration. They exchanged vows in the soft sunlight, promising to support, respect, and care for each other. The day was filled with laughter, music, and quiet moments of reflection. Clara felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she had found a life built on her own choices. In the weeks and months that followed, Clara fully embraced her new life. She continued to work on the ranch, care for the animals, and explore the land. She discovered a joy in small accomplishments, like planting crops that thrived, repairing fences, and teaching herself new skills. Each day brought a sense of purpose and satisfaction that she had never known in her previous life. Clara also found joy in simple pleasures, watching sunsets over the plains, feeling the wind on her face, and listening to the soft sounds of the forest. She had learned to savor moments without fear, to appreciate beauty, and to find contentment in the ordinary. Her laughter became a regular sound on the ranch, shared with Luke and the animals, a reflection of the freedom she had earned. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Clara stood on the porch of the cabin, looking out over the fields. The sky was painted in shades of pink, orange, and gold, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of nature. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey she had taken, the struggles, the fears, and the courage it had taken to escape. Every step had led her to this moment, a life she had chosen for herself. Luke joined her, standing silently beside her, his presence comforting and steady.
9.
They watched the sunset together, no words needed. Clara felt complete, whole, and at peace. She had survived, she had thrived, and she had chosen a life filled with freedom and love. The past no longer controlled her. It had shaped her, taught her, and prepared her for the future she now embraced. Clara understood that life would continue to bring challenges, but she felt ready. She had discovered strength within herself she had never known, built relationships based on trust and respect, and found a home where she was valued and free. The journey had been long, difficult, and sometimes frightening, but it had led to a life full of possibilities, and as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Clara knew she was exactly where she was meant to be, on her own terms with the person she trusted most, living a life she had fought for and earned. The past was behind her, the present was alive with hope, and the future stretched before her, bright and full of promise. For the first time, Clara felt truly, completely free.